Greetings this fine April Fool's Day, a day where I have the tradition to upload a bunch of weird videos within the chaos of all the pranks going on. And for this one, I'll talk Sonic Roboblast 2, on my level mod series Sol Sestancia in particular. Some people wanted an update on Sol Sestancia 3. There is none. I needed a break after part 2, and on top of that, I'm a little concerned as the main Sonic Roboblast fan game has several updates recently that have caused some slowdown in seemingly all level mods, including mine. And boy, look at that main page, cheerfully mentioning that the developers have decided that this change is not worth breaking the mod compatibility for just yet. So they'll save that for the next major update for the game. Oh boy! So this wasn't the actual mod destroying update yet, it's still coming. Wow, now I'm really excited to get working on a level mod with that sort of Damocles hanging over me. Now, granted, I already kind of know what's happening. The game is gonna be moving to a new engine. I'll spare you the technical details, but level maps have to be in a different format. So I can already build Sol Sestancia 3 in that way. But still, who knows what other fun surprises still await me. And now I have to waste a lot of time transferring my old levels over to the new system. You know, I really rather spend my time making new shit rather than endlessly fixing up old shit. This is like heaving water out of a sinking ship. I mean, not that I would call the main game a sinking ship, not at all. It's getting better and better, and all the new updates will definitely improve matters. I really love what the game is becoming. I didn't intend to throw shade at their work in and on itself. It's just that, you know, for the modders creating side content, it's a bit of a turbulent time. At least I got someone, Gamer of Days, thank you, to transfer my old packs into a new engine, so the preservation of the older levels into the new update is already in progress, more or less. But yeah, there's still probably a lot of surprises for me waiting, so we'll see how that goes. Otherwise, besides that, maybe I should be thinking of hiring a programmer to make the Sol Sestancia level pack just exist with its own executable, like how Sonic and a Gunslinger does it. But yeah, that's way beyond my coding abilities to do so myself, so I would probably have to hire someone for that. But yeah, I don't know, I'm not super motivated to jump in this arena with all that fun stuff hovering over me just yet. That said, I am working on one new level, or a series of one level, as modder Goldenshine is working on this super cool new gimmick, rail grinds, to be implanted into the game, and I figured I'd get a lot of requests for me making a stage for that new gameplay mechanic, so working on that. There's also a collaboration level pack still in the works, LDC, where I contributed 2 levels, so although they're with more Sonic Adventure style textures rather than my hand-drawn ones for the theme. So hey, there is stuff coming, even when I'm not really working Sol Sestancia 3 just yet. There's also another project going on by other people, someone's working to translate Sol Sestancia to Spanish. If you want to help with that, presumably with voices or something, I'm not sure, here's the Twitter page, the X page for that, the Hispanic Sol Sestancia team, so you might want to check that out. But I'm not directly affiliated with them, so I'm not sure what's going on. Anyway, even if I'm not doing production work on Sol Sestancia yet, at least I have more time to plan the next installment. So in that spirit, for this video, I'm going to have a quick look at Sol Sestancia 2 again, give a bit of a commentary on what's going on there, what I tried to do, whether I failed, and how a Sol Sestancia 3 might do things differently. And of course, you're always welcome in the comments to throw more suggestions my way. I mean, we're still in the planning phase, so anything is possible. So, Sol Sestancia, my personal little level pack. I mostly made it out of the realization that what I'm looking for most in a Sonic level is something that I wasn't just really getting out of any official stages or even fan-made alike. I mostly made it out of a realization that stuff that I really want in a Sonic level isn't really something I'm getting out of the official stages anymore. Neither in a lot of the fan-made content. Namely, instead of more abstract roller coasters in the sky with a generic theme plastered on it, I really want Sonic getting down and dirty into the environment itself, racing through the streets, through buildings, really interacting directly with the world. Because, see, to me, Sonic's supposed to be a bit of a bad boy, a naughty little fella, right? And this can be reflected in levels themselves. Good little Nintendo platformers, they're all designed to have levels very sparingly and functional. You're in a game world tailor-made for the character and for the gameplay. So you're going to Grassland, you're going to Iceland, going through carefully designed challenges. But Sonic, no, he ain't. He's a naughty boy. He's a bit of a rebel. He crashes through the level design, just smashes through the walls, and he's causing a lot of collateral damage. Not out of evil, just, you know, a little collateral damage while saving the world. Sometimes your action hero just needs to pursue the criminal on horseback through a shopping mall to save the world, that sort of thing. Adds a little spice that you don't really get when Sonic is just flinging around in abstract shapes in limbo. But making a fully realized and detailed landscape is a lot of hard work and very expensive, and that for a character who blasts through the environment in seconds, it's understandably not a very good use of your asset. Quite a bit of a money waster to make the environment super detailed. But well, I can't help myself. This is the spice that I'm missing with most levels. And since I'm a terrible artist who churns out textures relatively fast compared to actual proper artists, I figured I'm the perfect man for the job to make these kinds of levels. Being Dutch, I like a little bit of a coziness, a little bit of a adding all these little details and make it a lot of fun. And besides that, I wanted to do a bit of experimenting with storytelling within a game. Now, mind you, when I say storytelling, I don't really mean storytelling. As in, Sol Sestancia's story is really dumb and I'm mostly making up it as I go along. It's not written well, per se, but that's not really my point. When you get like a fan game that has like a story in it, like the story is presented very stilted. You get a giant wall of text, or a character just standing in an open field just barfing out the plot to you. Like, no. What I'm looking for is storytelling through gameplay. That how the game is designed is in and on itself creating the context, the vibe of what's happening. I mean, yes, there are NPCs explicitly saying what's happening at times, sure, but that's the story foundation. But it's more about creating a vibe, or the music that's playing, the way how a level flows, the set pieces you have to interact with, the visuals, that those really create the story in a more cinematic visual kind of way, rather than just text. Really using the medium of video games itself. So I wanted to create context-heavy levels, kind of experiment with it and see how it works. And that's really the heart and soul of Sol Sestancia. There's a specific setting, the island, there's an event happening, Eggman slowly brainwashing the public and the player dealing with it, and all the levels are designed specifically around an environment or an event. Not just to be gameplay, but to really explain what the island is, what the people are, what Eggman is doing, what you're doing. The levels can be very interconnected sometimes, with some areas of the levels and hubs returning in other levels under different circumstances, that sort of thing. So, the difference between Sol Sestancia 1 and 2 is that the first one was way more chill, less scripted, much more open, also much more tropical. The NPCs didn't really get involved with the story much, just occasionally pop up with Sonic and friends themselves driving the story forward. And levels were mostly just focused on creating an environmental vibe. Mostly because of my lack of knowledge of what else to do. Now, by the time I got to Sol Sestancia 2, I learned a few tricks, so I started changing focus a little. So, Sonic and friends talking in the cutscenes in part 1 was mostly a leftover from an early attempt to get real animated cutscenes into the game, which I never accomplished. I also later realized that a lot of people don't really use the standard main characters of the game, but use their own custom characters. And they wouldn't be represented in the cutscenes. Hence why in Sol Sestancia 2, the playable character would lose their agency and become more of a Nintendo-style silent protagonists. And the side characters would drive the story more. Especially since I learned a lot more tricks how to get fancy camera shots or NPC characters actually integrated and interacting with the levels, so NPCs could be seen running around, causing trouble. And so I went for a more mission-based structure, where the player joins the freedom fighters and goes around doing missions for them. I got a lot of feedback from people later that not entirely liking the fact that the heroes are more silent, being ordered around in this one. So Sol Sestancia 3 will probably get the main characters themselves talking again, like in part 1. Especially now with subtitles and portraits, it's a little less confusing and spooky when random phantom voices come out of the protagonists. Part 3 is probably going to be a bit of a mix between Sol Sestancia 1 and 2 in that regard. Now, one thing I did in part 2 that people also didn't really seem to like much, to my surprise and disappointment, was me trying to give each level also their own original gameplay gimmick or mechanic. Since my focus is mostly on story and environments, I was kind of worried that the gameplay itself would be really boring. So with part 2, I created way more gameplay-heavy areas and made sure that each level had at least one unique gameplay mechanic, from searchlights releasing robots when caught, branches launching you upwards, a ticking time bomb level. And with the exception of the chair, I think all of those gimmicks were either hated or left people apathetic, so I guess I should really drop it for part 3. Well, not entirely. There's some gameplay mechanics I kind of need because they belong in whatever context I'm trying to create in future levels, but I guess I won't bend over backwards to come up with something for every level now. Bit of a shame. I kind of liked some of the ideas, like the corridor where you see electric water rising before it hits the player, so you have to jump 2 separate platforms to avoid it. I thought it was kind of neat, but I guess not. I really wish I had more camera options sometimes anyway. Like there's this section in Robotropolis stage where you have to climb up a wall on top of slanted conveyor belts with different helpful or dangerous monitors falling down. I love the idea, but it really doesn't work with a 3D camera of the game. I wish there really was a way to lock the camera in place while it still follows the player and the gameplay remains in 3D. Something like what Sonic Uptown had. Oh well. Anyway, general statements aside, let's take a quick look at all the levels individually and their inspiration, where I stole homework from, and what things that probably need a little fixing up in a future update. Here we go. Lost City. Boy, what an awkward start for this pack. Not only the most ancient of all the levels with very awkward level design, like the whole open area after the title, purely for dramatic title reasons, but a complete waste in terms of gameplay and level progression. It doesn't even look that impressive. It's also the only level that doesn't really have anything to do with the main plot of this pack, so if anything it's more foreshadowing what Port 3 is about. So it really makes it a bit of a sore thumb of the pack. Apparently the level has a ton of slowdown for a lot of people. I think it's because of the booby trap at the end where there's a lot of projectiles being thrown. I diminished it to try and stop the lag, but now the booby trap looks really utterly pathetic. Oh well. Awesome music for just a couple little balls bouncing around. When I have to port Sol Sestancia 2 to the new engine, I guess I might use the opportunity to create more custom-made booby traps rather than using the projectiles and falling rocks. The engine really doesn't like those. As for the art direction of this level, the runes were kind of inspired by Crash Bandicoot, and the underground city was inspired by artwork from Solado Robo's concept art. So the music track playing, Castletown, from the unreleased Jazz Jackrabbit 3 game, has this amazing dramatic crescendo in its track. I really tried to design the opening section in the level in such a way where it's timed, where the dramatic music change happens right when you get to the ruined town portion. But of course it's near impossible for me to time players since I have no control over them and there's a huge difference in how fast each individual character is. In hindsight, I should have really just forced that music change by manually skipping to that part, and oh well, doesn't really matter, I suppose. Back to Alidia. For the sake of creating this sense of continuity on this island, we're back in the first hub area from part 1, but now at night. I like the concept of a hub level suddenly turning into an action stage with the whole use game design for storytelling concept. The only problem with that is that this area isn't really designed for action stage purposes. You're really meant to wander around. So I had to use these wanted monitors randomly popping out of the ground just to guide the player in the right direction. Hope it makes sense. Artwork of the Night City is heavily inspired by this old DOS game, Slipstream 5000. I really love how the Tokyo Street... But I failed to replicate that look. I didn't really get the scaling right. The nighttime city textures are really random and nonsensical here through the whole pack. I guess they work more as pure vibe than having any kind of logic to them. Also, fun fact, the supermarket was modeled after one from Leisure Suit Larry 1, the remake. I don't know, despite the raunchy humor, I always thought the Leisure Suit Larry games had a nice coziness to it that I like. Just chilling out in hotels, cruises, and nighttime supermarkets. A little grimy, but in a cozy way. There's a bit where Luke the Fox cameos yelling about his flat. He did move into a new flat at the time I worked on this level, hence why I kind of thought it funny to put it there. His real flat doesn't look anything like that, though. Lucky for him. Town. I think I already talked about this level before. Making city levels is always a challenge if you want to keep the logic of a city still intact, hence why most platformers just make it about construction sites or hopping around on rooftops. I wanted to come up with a new concept to have platforming come natural in the city environment, and thought that going through the buildings could be fun. I mean, as a kid, I always looked at those giant buildings and kind of imagined what kind of stuff that must be inside of them, so they needed such giant buildings to accommodate it. Boring truth is that they probably endless offices and apartments, but hey, it's cartoon land here, so we can put swimming pools and courtrooms and casinos and golf centers inside of those. Why not? In the real world, they'll probably be on the ground floor instead, but hey, screw that, there's a better view up here. Another thought I once had was doing an inversion of a typical Sonic Casino level. Like, you have the typical Las Vegas-style rooftop stage again, like we had many times before, but now it's set during the daytime and replacing the casinos with having wacky midget golf courses and tropical swimming pool tubes to create the level geometry in the sky instead. Maybe one day I'll do something like that. In this level, I do an early attempt, but I wasn't really good at creating the more rollercoastery roadways required to make that work well, so. Next, Royal Palace. Fun fact! This was actually meant to be 2 separate levels. I wanted to escape from the palace to be its own separate stage, but then I realized I didn't really have enough gameplay IDs for that escape sequence, and realized the whole point of the escape is just pure naked spectacle, and any attempt to give it more complex level design would kind of ruin the effect. So now it's packed into 1 stage. Out of all the levels that have slowdown and lag, this was the level I suspected would be the most likely to break. Yet it never seemed to do, so lucky me. Very stable level, shockingly enough. So this level has the most tone and story changes. There's like 4 major tonal shifts in 1 stage. Like you start off with a swashbuckling break into the palace, then into a farce when you crash into Robotnik's little party, then it becomes more spooky when you explore the deserted and ransacked place, and then it turns to mad spectacle when all hell breaks loose in the escape. So yay, as far as the storytelling of the level is concerned, this is the highlight, I suppose. The ballroom sequence was supposed to be much longer. I imagined creating a section where the player had to scale huge walls and get on top of a chandelier to escape the ballroom unseen, but it didn't really visually work out very well to make the room too big. And it was very difficult to figure out how to keep the player away from Robotnik, was what's stopping you from just taking him out and winning in one go. So I figured this would work better as a quick sequence and not spend too much time on it. It's a shame because there's custom music playing here that someone composed for me. Good old Jello. But it's way too long for this sequence, so most people won't hear much of the song. Hence why I later created a bonus mini-level in a later stage, just as an excuse to use the track again. Then there's the whole sequence where you have to look for a key. Like, originally I wanted it to be this much more like a full-on maze, where you really had to explore the rooms and run around the maze, but yeah, that's not really fun in a Sonic game. So instead I came up with this big open room plan. Still have a lot of rooms you can explore, but you can just kind of skip it and just jump straight to the top. The palace is visually supposed to represent the Acorn Palace from Sonic's ATM, although there you only see the daytime, so I had to improvise the colors more. I kind of like it. Next, Knothole. I always loved this area as a kid. It's like having your own treehouse, but now a whole village of it. Really cool to make it come alive as a fully explorable location. As a salute to the original Sonic Roboblast game, that game started off with a level called Knothole, even though it doesn't resemble the town at all. I guess in the 90s the name Knothole just represented Sonic's home area in general, like what Green Hill Zone does now. But yeah, a snippet of the song playing in that level is worked into the music track playing, so my little salute to Sonic Roboblast's humble beginnings. Great Forest! This wasn't originally meant to be its own level, but to be a half a level with Robotropolis. However, since Sol Sestancia 2 is almost entirely taking place at night, or indoors, or in grungy factories, and was really losing its tropical sunny feeling, I decided to expand this area, make it way more open-ended, to evoke the first Sol Sestancia more in terms of level design. I thought people would love that, but I think it's one of the most disliked levels of this bunch. Although that's probably more because of the more gameplay-heavy indoor areas in the tunnels later. This level is partly inspired by a sound wall in a park close to my neighborhood, weirdly enough. I always loved the look of that, and thus I wanted to stage set with a giant stone wall in the middle of a forest. So here you go. Robotropolis was meant to immediately resemble proper Robotropolis from the cartoons, but I softened up the looks a bit to make it more like a generic industrial area, to make it fit more with the Sol Sestancia general theme, not make it too bleak. So yeah, the general theme is much more soft, and it's set at sunset rather than the moody darkness it's usually seen in. This level had a visual gimmick at first, where the entire level is essentially one big road that the player keeps following. You run into a barricade, have to go through a factory or a junkyard for a detour, and then you return back to the main road, right where you left off. And at all times you could just look around past the barricades and see earlier or later parts of the level. Sadly, because this level suffered from huge slowdowns, I removed chunks of the empty space in between those areas in a desperate attempt to make it run more smooth. So now that effect is largely gone. Oh well. The game engine really doesn't like having all those objects move on conveyor belts. Shame, I really like that as a visual and as a gameplay theme. But yeah, I guess I won't be doing that anymore. Visually, the level is really inspired by an old DOS game, Normality. I really love the look of that game. And it has a little bit of a Super Nintendo era Capcom vibe to it, like the Frozen Factory kind of resembles some areas from Bunkers. TV Studio! I think I talked about the level before, since it was released earlier. Anyway, TV Studio. Man, what a challenge, figuring out how to make basically an office building work as a Sonic level. I figured having you crash out of the windows and occasionally hopping around on balconies to jump back into the building would add the necessary platforming dynamic to it. Buggy the Bug made a bunch of cool physics objects for me that I could put to great use here. The chair was a lot of fun, but I especially love those enemies you can knock around and kick off a cliff. That's always fun. I only realized after the level was almost finished that Buggy actually made the chair able to jump. So now that mechanic is only used in the final section. Although if you use it in the second area, you can use it to get a secret emblem. Yeah, making this level was a lot of fun. Out of all my levels, the one that plays the most is a cartoon, except maybe the farm level. I always imagine what a TV studio would look like from the inside, although in reality it's probably a lot more boring. Actually, I have a friend who works in a TV studio, but I never asked. Oh well. Visuals here are mostly copied from, well, I mean Sonic Mania, of course, but the office areas are more modeled after some interiors from Persona 2. In case they look familiar to you. The outside areas are very inspired by Sonic. Escape from Robotropolis. Definitely talked about this one before. Was released earlier in a level design contest. In the final version, I updated it a bit where the pink pools aren't immediately deadly, but you can still escape out of them. Not much to say. I tried to evoke level design from early 3D platformers like Croc, with having more tiny rooms with specific gameplay challenges, but people really didn't like this stage, so I'll drop it in the future. Really wanted to play around with how light works and textures, based on how moody Robotropolis always looked in Sonic's ATM with the lighting. So I had a lot of fun with kind of playing around with colors here. Although I only use CTM as inspiration for the interior areas. For the outdoor Robotropolis, it was more modeled after how it looks in Sonic Underground, being more of a livable city and thus closer to what would work in Sol Sestancia. Next stage, the train track. Ugh. This level is supposed to be a secret that you unlock by taking a hidden pathway in the previous level, but for whatever reason, I can't program it to do so it just keeps playing automatically after the last one. Which sucks since this level is a very difficult one and is meant to be optional. So this level is basically two leftovers. Avalis, another modder, wanted to add an extra part to Escape of Robotropolis where trains were coming at the player. It was meant to be in the level itself, but the level was so crammed with details it kept crashing and I had to delete it. Instead, I made it a separate stage where you just run through subways dodging trains, which is like a lovely concept. I love it. But it's kind of hard to do with the camera since you can never really see what's chasing you with the 3D camera. So level design was really limited, and I couldn't really do much with the concept yet. However, a later level, Island Crossing, was also too long and kept crashing, so I had to delete a section out of that level as well. So I put that section in this one, so now we get two deleted sequences combined into one brand new level. I added this truck chase and some trains in the outdoor section to keep at least the train theme going for a bit longer. But yeah, the two halves don't really work together, I think. Oh well, still a fun stage, but it really sucks I have to rely so much on 2D mode to make the chases work. Versus Orbot and Cubot, another level that feels like an oddball and doesn't really fit with the rest of the story. Left over from the first Sol Sestancia, but since Sol Sestancia 2 was so much more moody and dark, I wanted another upbeat cartoony level set at daytime, in nature. It was meant to be more slapsticky with more interaction with the farm animals, but I suck at coding and I really couldn't get much to work. Like the wild pig ride, it was meant to be like the spinning chair, but it kept crashing when I tried to modify the chair. So instead now it's a bit weird scripted section that doesn't really work. Although, now I know how to make self-propelling objects, so maybe I'll give it a new try when I update the stage. For some reason, I associate mountain ranches with old PC games. I think I read somewhere that ID Software made the Commander Keen games on a cabin at the lake, and there's Shira Online, which they're building at the Shira Mountains, and there's Redwood Studios in the logos, and that's probably why. So yeah, with Sonic Roll Blast being a Doom Engine game, I figured I paid respect to that, hence the land party area. I really love the aesthetic of American mountain farms. Even though Sol Sestancia is supposed to be more Mediterranean Europe than American. Oh well, I can do whatever I want, I guess. Convoy, the only level with no unique gameplay mechanics. There was meant to be a wind blowing against the player when on the top of the vehicles, but that wasn't really fun at all, so I dropped it. It is kind of nice to just have a clean, straight platforming level here. No fancy decors or complex mechanics. Just a bunch of vehicles to jump on. Fun fact, this level is meant to be foreshadowed in the science fair stage in the first pack with the black car scene in one room, but I didn't really like the visual for a full level, so I borrowed visual ideas from Mega Man X2 instead. Although the black cars from the science fair do appear in the pack during the Scratching Grounder boss fight, so it's not entirely wasted. I guess these are the more advanced car models. Also in the knothole section, there was supposed to be more elaborate battle scene when you roll out of the town with several freedom fighters running past you, but it's really glitchy and you can barely see them, so... Now I know how to make them more self-propelling, I'll see if I can fix it in an update. Island Cross, the one and only tropical stage of this entire pack. Whoops! And everyone's favorite level, except mine, because it kept crashing. This level got really unstable at the end. So the idea is that you really move from one part of the island all the way to the other end. And so I wanted this level to be really long, since you cover way more ground in this one than in most levels. And I also wanted a lot of the locations from previous levels to be remixed in here, to really give you that sense of continuity, that you're really running through the entire island, including through portions of previous levels. Problem with this idea, copy-pasting older level sections made everything really unstable, especially since I used a lot from Island Tour, my very first level pack, which was a lot more crudely made, and thus made the level very unstable. The water section was really meant to be only halfway through the level, but now it's the finale. Couldn't be helped. Originally, this level was meant to be the one with no gimmick, just mindless racing. But then I discovered in the Convoy level I could have those objects fall from the sky and change the ground geometry. That was really fun. So on this level, even though on that level that was just a visual effect, as soon as I discovered I could do that, I really wanted to give it a gameplay use. Hence why in this level there's constantly flying cannonballs, breaking the ground, and making water splash up. It was a lot of fun. I kind of gave myself a pointless headache in trying to figure out where all the locations we're going through would make in a geometric sense. Like, when you go horizontally through this island tour section, then the level should really intersect with later areas from that pack as well, since that was one hole. But that wouldn't really work. So, I mean, originally in this long road area from Island Tour 2, I wanted to do it in reverse, but that wouldn't really make sense in a geographical sense. I also wanted to have the part of the level go through past the Rock and Roll Cafe from Sol Sestancia 1, but then I realized that building is on the Santador town of the other side of the island, so that doesn't really make sense to show up here. I mean, players probably don't think about all those details, and it's kind of pointless, but yeah, I'm trying to make sense, damn it. Visually, I borrowed a lot from Buck Up and Drive. I love the coastal track in that one. Mount Terra, yeah, that's a cheesy name. We're going to the center of the planet, baby. Welcome to the last proper stage of the pack. When I talked to a friend of mine about Sol Sestancia, he told me about Hawaii, how it's tropical around the coast, but if you go higher up, the area gets much more dry and barren. Since I didn't really want to make the area just barren, I wanted to give it more of a Wild West Monument Valley look. So we keep Americanizing the island, oh well. First, I wanted to make it visually resemble the opening area from the Golden Sun Dark Dawn game, but the purples didn't really translate well with Sonic Roboblast's palette, so instead I went more with the art style of Lomax as inspiration. I'm really proud of the level design here. It was really challenging for me since there's a lot of open areas, but then I had to figure out how to put a linear roller coastery feel into them, give them paths that still feel like a Sonic rhythm to them, but still keep it open, and I think I managed that. I also really like the open sand dune hills. That reminds me of sand dunes I played a lot around in as a kid. Ah, the branches. They were originally just regular springs until Golden Shine stepped in and made them way more awesome for me. So awesome. Thanks, Golden Shine. They're supposed to be operating like the poles in Sonic Advance. Really cool. He also fixed up the golf clubs in Uptown too. The only problem is those only work in a later version of Sonic Roboblast 2, so a lot of people playing the game had trouble with these things because they had an older version. That's a shame. I made a lot of new side areas so you can skip those branches. Heart of the World, the final boss area. I got comments that people were disappointed that the crystals that bounce Sonic around only showed up very briefly in the last mountain level, so I expanded this stage to have a lot more fun with them. Originally, this level would have had more busy work in them. It was meant to be a mission where the player had to activate 3 switches, with the lights going out and Metal Sonic showing up after the third, but it wasn't really fun. It was really meant to just build up atmosphere, not really have a gameplay purpose to it. And now I had those crystals as gameplay anyway, so I deleted that whole section. Nickel still says the voice line about the switches, but now it's just interrupted with static to make it creepy. Bit of a dramatic tone for the finale, I know. The rest of the pack was so fun. But, well, we need a cliffhanger. Ah, the boss. I'm terrible at programming. Especially bosses. So it's really a modded version of an Eggman boss from Princess Plushima's boss pack. I did temper a lot with the code to make the phases go by much faster. Originally, the player needed to wait a lot longer before they had another chance to attack, but I preferred when the player can just wail into those bosses. Although it's still not as fluent as I wish it was. I really don't have full mastery of the codes yet. Another problem with that Metal Sonic is he always rises a bit after being hit, which means that if you hit him when he's really high up early in the battle, then you can get to a point where he's near impossible to hit. Oops. If I ever update this pack, I have to... But yeah, very annoying boss, but hey, at least I have a boss, I suppose. Hope I can find someone else who can mod special bosses for me for Sol Sestancia 3. I don't really care for bosses myself, but people said they were really missing in Sol Sestancia 1, and I guess I need them for dramatic effect, especially for the finale. So yeah, origin of the level was ending straight when the player hits the Master Asher Emerald with a flash of light and you disappear. But since it probably takes years before I get to Sol Sestancia 3, I realized I probably should have the cliffhanger be a little softer and leave the player at least in a relatively safe position, so we're not literally hanging on a cliff for years. But yeah, so there you have it, Sol Sestancia 2, 5 years in the making. And now for part 3. It's probably going to be about 50 levels long. Not sure how open or linear I'm going to make the levels, because I hear a lot of people got lost in the levels from Sol Sestancia 2, so really have to think about how to construct them still. Oh well, and of course the upcoming rails will be integrated in the level design from this point on, so gonna be fun, I hope. You folks can request your character showing up or offer services for voice acting or coding if you want to do that. I'm still in the planning phase now, so anything is possible. Although I did mostly nail down the specific events that's going to happen in the game. But yeah, for now, I got this level to finish. So yeah, folks, see ya.